Hi everyone, my name is Robert Gregory and I'm the Public Affairs Director of the Australian Jewish Association. My guest today needs no introduction for most people. He's Australia's most famous Jewish journalist, probably the most prominent Australian Jew online ever, Avi Yemini. He's got millions of followers, including 500,000 on Twitter alone, which is almost as many as the Prime Minister. Avi's just written a book. It's called Avi Yemini, A Rebel from the Start, and it's a riveting personal story that I encourage everyone to buy and to read. Some of the issues Avi explores have wider relevance, though, for our community and the wider community, as well as the work the Australian Jewish Association does. So thank you for joining me today, Avi.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Avi, you're only in your 30s, but you've lived so many different lives. You're one of 17 children born to a very religious family. You rebelled, you were homeless, you became addicted to drugs, you rehabilitated yourself, you served in Gaza with the Israeli army, you had forays as a businessman, in politics, now you've landed up in journalism. Through it all, you've remained a proud Jew and a proud Zionist. What does Judaism and Zionism mean to you?
Look, to me, it's funny because I get asked that question a lot with regards to my faith and belief in God and all that. And to me, Judaism is more about our people. And, for generations, our whole history has been one of that where people have tried to wipe us out as a nation, whether you believe in God, whether you're part of the Chabad community, whether you're part of the Mizrahi community, or if you just have Jewish blood in you. So for me, there's that attachment to my Jewish heritage, almost like a race. Now, growing up Orthodox, I have a very soft spot for the Chabad Jewish community because, I still listen to that music when I train. When I'm in the gym and I've got my, Mordechai Ben David playing in my ears and somebody walks up to me and goes to listen to, what's this music that's pumping Avi up? It turns out to be some slow, Mordechai Ben David song or Oven Fried or Shweki these days, who knows? But, my connection is deeper, but I also understand and respect the idea of what, real Judaism is, because often I feel like the Jewish community is represented by Jews, almost like me, Jews by heritage and culture, rather than real Jews that practice the religion, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people are going to agree with you. And yeah, there's nothing like some good Chabad Nigunim. I think
I'm not such an. I'm into the camp songs. It's funny because when I go to Farbrengens, all the Chabadniks know that I like all ones that know me personally. They know that I like the camp songs, and a lot of the YG guys. The last couple of years, I'd go to some of their Farbrengens, and as soon as I come there, it's like, all right, we're doing the camp song. So
I've been to a few Gun Yisraels in my time. So
Ganya's, well, it's got to be the slow camp songs, the Little Bird and Oi Rebbe, Oi Rebbe.
good flashback tunes, yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, so anti-Semitism is growing. It's growing worldwide. It's growing in Australia. Just last week, there was an incident, a group of Jewish school children in Melbourne. They were threatened by a knifeman shouting anti-Semitic slurs. Now, establishment Jewish groups around the world, they speak a lot about right-wing anti-Semitism, but often they seem to play down left-wing anti-Semitism or Islamist anti-Semitism. Where do you see the big threats and most anti-Semitism coming from?
So there definitely is a rise in right-wing anti-Semitism. That there's no doubt about that. I think in the Trump era, it dropped. It was like there was a period there where it was cool to stand for Israel, and they were almost using Israel as, an example for some of their kind of twisted ideas. But that time's passed. Biden's back, so the division and hate has come firing back even from the right wing, and I have seen that trend with people that I used to even follow, and I've seen that their online playing with anti-Semitic tropes, and I kind of sound like everyone I hate when I say that, but it is true. There is a rise in that, but Having said that, they're playing to a really a tiny minority in comparison to what you see on the other side of the left, on the other side, the left, and Islamist groups, of course. Muslim groups, if you just go into the chat groups, anytime there's anything Jewish, you straight away hear the slurs. Anytime you see a video posted of me, you straight away see those slurs. And our community organizations have always ignored both those groups. Really, the left, they don't touch them. And the perfect example is only, I don't know what it was, a month ago, when there were Nazis rallying and there was Antifa, the anti-Nazis, rallying against him in Melbourne. I spoke to both groups. Both, I think, are ridiculous, but both should be confronted when it comes to their ideas. And that's what we did. And we tried to show people how ridiculous both sides are. But what I found interesting was that the Nazis were a tiny fringe group. They couldn't pull, 20 or 30 of these idiots that were masked up and clowns, right? And they looked ridiculous, and everyone sees that. But on the other side, you had hundreds, if not more, and they turned violent immediately against the one Jew there. So you tell me what's a bigger threat? I know I live it. I tell you right now, I've never been violently assaulted by the right, who have some bad ideas, and they've engaged with me. But the left, time and time again, I have, and same as Islamic extremist groups, I've been targeted by them too, and sometimes in violent ways. So I get it. It's easy to condemn the Nazis. It's easy. And you see that with the Liberal Party as well. You see that in Victoria. It's so easy to condemn the one thing that everybody agrees is a clown show, is ridiculous. There's no one subscribing to their ideas. However, on the other side, you have the left that are getting this free pass, and they're growing much faster. And in fact, they're using their anti-Israel stuff to recruit people they wouldn't have had before. So the threat is very much from the left, very much from Islamist groups, but our organizations, the anti-defamation, or what do they call it in Australia? The Vera Abramovich, those kind of groups, they're so focused on banning the swastika, banning the Nazi salute, banning these things that if anyone really sees them, thinks they're ridiculous, but at the same time, give everything else on the other side a free pass.
Well, I think, people should listen to, because you are on the front lines dealing with it, whereas some of these organizations, they're in their cushy offices in, safe and Jewish neighborhoods. Perhaps they don't realize what's going on the ground.
Honestly, some of these organizations, I feel like it's their bread and butter to find anti-Semitism. And I think anti-Semitism should be called out wherever it's seen, wherever it's found, and where it's a real threat, where it's, but I feel like some of these ones, I almost feel like they go around painting these freaking swastikas themselves to get into the Herald Sun or the Sydney Morning Herald or whatever. It's kind of, that's why they exist. So they kind of generate these stories that create outrageous headlines. I'm less worried about a freaking kid that's painted a swastika than I am of these loony lefties that think it's okay to punch a Nazi, but their definition of a Nazi is a Zionist. Yeah. That's what worries me.
Now, your critics call you a Nazi. So I mean, you're in good company there. Recently, some other Jewish groups have been attempting to label the Australian Jewish Association as anti-Semitic. So, do you think that by crying wolf, by using these false labels, they're actually harming the fight against anti-Semitism?
Totally. The idea, the idea that they call anybody a Nazi for having an opposing view has taken away any meaning of that word, which is sad. As Jews, as people that grew up in the Australian Jewish community, we're actually a Holocaust. Melbourne's very much a Holocaust survivor community. I think probably the biggest outside of Israel, or one of the biggest outside of Israel. So the idea that they've diminished any meaning, and really what they've done by doing that is they've given the actual extremists again a free pass, because now they go, oh well, they call Avi Yemini a Nazi, so what does that matter? You know what I mean? So now when you call out actual Nazis or actual extremists, it doesn't feel as bad, because so many people agree and like a lot of my work, the average Joe. And when they hear you calling me a Nazi, the people that follow me that are normal, I'm not talking about anyone that has radical ideas, the average person that follows me that's normal, he keeps hearing them saying that I'm a Nazi. So then straight away when they put that label on somebody else that probably deserves it, that guy ignores it, because it's lost all meaning to him. He thinks, oh, well, he's probably actually good. He might actually go follow them because he thinks, oh, well, they say that about Avi. So I think they're very much hurting the cause of fighting anti-Semitism and extremism in general.
So, I mean, today, actually, we owe a special thanks. The reason for this interview is your book came to my attention actually because of The Guardian and the Australian Jewish News. So big thank you to them because of that. So basically, you did an interview with another great Jewish journalist. It's a friend of AJ, Morris Klein.
Love Morris, yeah.
Good man. Yeah, this interview mysteriously disappeared. So what happened there?
So I did the interview. It was a very funny story. So I did the interview with Maury, and I've known Maury for years. He's a good bloke, and he's never seemed to cower to the ridiculousness in our own community. And it was a great chat we had. He does it for some community radio station, and they have a partnership of sorts with the Australian Jewish News, where when any episode they do, they put it onto the AJN website. Now, the funny thing is, it was up there for like a week and a half or whatever. So it already had its good run. I think it was the most popular AJN article for years. But then what happened was the Guardian, their media correspondent, wrote a piece saying that she'd received complaints from the Jewish community or something along these lines. You can look up the article, but in a minute, because you might have to look up two versions of the article now. She wrote this thing. It was a hit piece against me, and it was clear by the wording that they would, you know what, I will literally read just the last paragraphs and explain to you the change in it. If I could put, oh, yep, I've got here, I think. I just think it's better to actually know what they were saying. Hold on, I'll look on my Twitter, or now known as X. So at the end of the last paragraph of this, hit piece, and it was quite funny because at the time I screenshotted the way she described what Maury was saying, because it was the best promotion to my book. But the last paragraph read like this: not long after we contacted the AJN about the glowing interview with Yemini, the entire page disappeared, even though national editor Gareth, I don't even know how do I pronounce his last name? Naruski? Is that his last name? Gareth Naruski. Gareth Naruski never got back to us. And I just love how beautiful that is, because it's the Guardian calling the AJN cowards for running and hiding and not even having the guts to answer their ridiculous ally that's not really their ally. It's just such a bizarre, unholy alliance there between the Guardian and the Jewish News. The Guardian would love to see nothing less than Israel's complete destruction. Anyways, so as you can see, the media correspondent for the Guardian reached out to AJN. The wording was, how dare you have a glowing interview with Yemini? And there was nothing, and I encourage everybody here to go and listen to the interview. It was a bit like what we're doing now. There was nothing even remotely controversial about the interview. But they called it a glowing interview because it talked about my book in a positive way. And so far, I haven't actually heard anything negative from somebody that's actually read my book, even detractors. So they didn't like that. They put the pressure on the AJN. AJN caved immediately, but this is like a week and a half later. So no one was really going there anyways. It was just typical cowardice by the Australian Jewish News. They disappeared the page. So then I did an interview, a long form interview with Neil Mitchell from 3AW, and I brought up this issue. Now, I don't know exactly the timeline because media sources are supposed to, if they update an article, the legitimate practice is to actually timestamp when you made any update, what the update was, and when you made the update. They didn't do any of that. So I only noticed it because after my interview with Neil Mitchell, I brought up the fact that I had respect for him for doing this interview, and I told him what the Guardian had just done. And the thing was, I knew that the Guardian, they can stand over the Australian Jewish News and imply a threat of exposing them as racist or whatever it is that they can, whatever brush they can tar them with, because the Australian Jewish News only wishes they were the Guardian. So I knew that they wouldn't be able to pressure somebody like Neil Mitchell, who I think in Australia is almost the authority in mainstream media news. And so I tagged the reporter and Neil Mitchell after the fact with that little clip of that part where we were talking about the Guardian and saying it's, it must hurt that you can't have this one cancelled or whatever. I can't remember the exact word. Then that reporter went and retweeted me baiting her about the fact and mocking her that she can't actually get this cancelled like she did the Australian Jewish News. And she wrote, what? Like asking as if, what are you talking about? So I went back to the article and I noticed it had been updated from the clear text that had an admission that they pressured the Jewish News to remove the glowing interview of me, to suddenly this paragraph was reworded to: the AJN hosts podcasts by members of the Jewish community, but does not make the podcast itself. The Yemini, by the way, she spelt my name wrong. That's probably racism. The Yemini episode, for a journalist, can't even get that right. The Yemini episode was highlighted accidentally and was removed when it was spotted by an editor. Weekly Beast, The Guardian understands. So suddenly it was not them pressuring it. It just happened organically, is what they want us to believe. And that's why she was like, why? What are you talking about? But too bad I've been in this game for long enough to screenshot every time I see something like this. So I had the before and after, and I shared that with her, and everybody on the internet realized she was full of crap, and she deleted her tweet and blocked it. But these are the allies that the Australian Jewish News is working so hard to make. Israel hating, Jew hating publications that on every other level, I guess, the Australian Jewish News sees themselves as, when I say they wish they were the Guardian, I think minus the anti-Zionism, the anti-Jewish stuff in there, they wish they were the Guardian because they agree with the Guardian on every other level.
Yeah, I mean, I try and say something nice about everyone, but for those who are listening who don't know, the Jewish News, it's a small community paper, but I mean, unlike in a lot of other communities, it seems to delight in attacking, religious people or center-right people or anyone that doesn't have their same woke agenda, and it's
really a woke publication that pretends to speak on behalf of our community.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have anywhere near the reach of you. They don't even have anywhere near the reach of us, of the Australian Jewish Association. They're quite a small organization. Yeah, that's, I think.
But they've been around for a very long time, and they're very much the perfect example of everything that's wrong with our community voices and leadership and community organizations. They are the same thing. They are unelected spokespeople, spokespeople. They've written articles in the past saying, literally the headline, Avi Yemini does not represent the Australian Jewish community. Okay. When did I say I represent the Australian Jewish community? Actually, now they hate you guys more because now you guys have members So you do represent more than they do, the Jewish community. And the funny thing is, I bet you if we took a poll within the Jewish community, I'm just guessing here, I reckon the entire Jewish community, including the Orthodox, and it was a genuine poll, I reckon more people would agree with most of my stances on issues than theirs. But they get to pretend like they represent the Jewish community, and I don't. But
Well,
yeah, that's the Jewish publication we're up against.
Dr. David Adler likes to say, and it applies to you as well. He says people vote with their clicks. So when they get a chance, they're online, no one's watching what they're doing, and you can see you've got the most followers, far more. Look how many the Jewish News has, or any of these organizations. But I want to drill down into an incident that happened several years ago. You invited Pauline Hanson, Malcolm Roberts, two One Nation politicians, to speak to a Jewish audience. Now, they're both friends of Israel. They're friends of the Jewish community. We deal a lot with them these days. It seems like a good idea. We know the Jewish community often hears from radical Greens politicians, but it didn't go down smoothly. So can you tell us what happened, and did you receive any support from the Jewish communal leadership?
Oh, no. It's funny. There's, the Jewish. So it was literally a talk for the Jewish community and what happened, and they were going to come. It was going to be held, I think, at the Caulfield Park Center, and the AFP came, did checks and all this. But at the end, Antifa, self-proclaimed anti-Nazis, the same ones that attacked a Jew at an anti-Nazi event, they promised to come from their inner city, Collingwood. These white uni students were going to come and invade a minority community area to protest one of those minority things in the name of anti-Nazis. It was a very confusing thing, but they promised violence, and at the end, the AFP, I think, advised the senators that they couldn't guarantee protection, so the thing was called off. But you're right. How many times in the Jewish community do they bring far left-wing anti-Israel, so not our friends, to speak to the Jewish community? But we couldn't hear from two elected senators who are supporters and friends of Israel, even, might I add, when it is unpopular with some of their base, especially these days. Remember when I said in Trump days, it was popular on the right to be supportive of Israel. Now it isn't. And these guys, Malcolm Roberts and Pauline Hanson, have shown that they don't care. They won't cower to those in their base that want to blame Jews and Israel for things.
Now, in your book, you mentioned the transformational role that some ABC anti-Israel bias had on your career. So the situation obviously hasn't improved.
No.
False coverage, inaccurate reporting from the ABC.
You guys do great work in that space, I see.
Yeah, that's our bread and butter. I mean, today we're in the newspapers today calling them out. So I wanted to ask, what's your impression of Australian media's coverage of Israel, and particularly because it is taxpayer funded, the ABC?
So look, I think it's nothing new. Like you said, it's been like that for many years. The only difference is now in the current environment, I think it's almost more dangerous. And you know what? Everybody has their right to have their own perspective and opinion of the conflict, even if they have no idea about it. I believe in free speech. I just don't think the taxpayer should fund it. If it's going to be taxpayer funded, it should be fair and balanced facts, not opinions passed on as delivered as presented as facts. And yeah, it's true for me. My whole journey into what I do now actually started from that, because I'd come out of the army, where I'd served mostly in Gaza, and I'd started the gyms here in Melbourne. And a couple of years into it, there was one of the operations, and I sat down. I did not know the difference between left and right or anything. I didn't care. I had my opinions, but less of it had to do with Australian politics. I was apathetic like most people. And then I sat down and watched ABC, and it was about Gaza, and it was exactly where I'd served, and I knew how they were distorting the facts, and it really angered me. And I used my at the time, IDF Gym Facebook page, which was at the time really popular. They were, we created two pretty popular gyms that were well known and online, and I just used that platform to kind of counter that narrative that was being fed to the public. And because we had such a broad audience, it was a way to engage with people from somebody who had not only been seen but served in that exact conflict. And and that's so ABC created a monster because, firstly, once that went down well with some people, bad with some, even some members left, but some people came to the gyms at the time because they were like, good on you for standing up. But I didn't care at the time. I justified it. You're coming to an IDF gym. Have you looked at the sign? You're coming to learn Krav Maga, the Israeli army self-defense techniques, which is based on the ideas of self-defense that are being applied there in Gaza that you're so angry about. So I didn't care. But then after, that operation and that conflict, there was a one of the peace deals or whatever, the ceasefires. I guess I enjoyed. I found my voice, and I enjoyed what had happened, and so I kept just giving opinions on just whatever issues was coming up in the media, and people started, members that liked our gyms. I don't know where they sat politically, but they basically said, well, maybe don't use your business name. It's not appropriate to use your business page if you have political views, maybe keep them separate. And that's when I opened Avi Yemini Facebook page, the first one, which, and I told people, if you want to hear my opinions on whatever, come over there. And that's where it all started. And from there, here we are today. That's probably now almost 10 years ago.
Wow, what a journey. I'll ask you one more question. I've seen how some segments of our community, they view you as sort of a rock star, particularly in the Orthodox community, young people. I've actually, you won't remember this, but I once bumped into you in the street with a friend of mine, and he asked you for a selfie. So, these type of things, I can't imagine any other leader of a Jewish, communal organization being treated that way. Yet they claim to represent the community, and it seems that whatever the issue, whether it's the voice, whether it's gender, whether it's climate, they all say exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
That it's all woke. So, yeah, people like you seem to draw a significant amount of the community. So, do you think there needs to be more diversity, more people like you running institutions? Like, what needs to happen?
I don't want to run nothing in the Jewish community, but I think you guys are doing a great job. I think absolutely there needs to be diversity in thought. I think one of the issues we have in our community, right, is that traditionally the conservative views has been what I was referring to before as the real Jews, the ones that practice the faith. Like any group, people that are religious tend to be like really religious. I'm not talking about, woke religion of 2023. I'm talking about people from any religion, whether it's Christians, Muslims, Jews. They are all conservative, really. They might disagree on certain issues like immigration or something, but when it comes to all these woke agendas that we're talking about now, they agree on that. And so our community is no different. The religious, the Orthodox community is quite conservative. The problem is they couldn't give a stuff about joining or running the orgs within our Jewish community, because you've got the Chabad community, you've got the Adas community, you've got your modern Orthodox. I guess some of them get involved a bit, and a bit of the Chabad, but it's not the majority of the Jewish organizations are liberal, not religious, cultural Jews that love being that are just as power hungry as Daniel Andrews. They're in it for their own agendas, and they are all woke, not because that's one of the funny things. I don't even think half of them believe the nonsense they say. They just think that's what you got to say to be a part of the broader political clique. Why do half these leaders in the Jewish community want the position? It's because of the connection it gives them to premiers and prime ministers and whatever. That's what it is. It's for something. So I don't even think they believe half the nonsense that they share, but they go along with it. And I think that that's true beyond the Jewish community. But we certainly, they harm our community by taking these positions, especially when, a lot of conspiracy theories, they love to, the theorists love to take Jewish organization statements and things to use against the Jewish community, saying, you see, these are the guys that are really pushing it. These are the guys. And also when it comes to, even more so when it comes to the push and actually the some of the policies that have started because of our community, things like banning the swastika and whatever, and now the Roman salutes, things like that. It only feeds to those conspiracy theorists, because they say, you see, you want to know who controls us is just look at who we're not allowed to talk about, and that feeds it. And it's just such a wrong way to deal with these sorts of issues. And yeah, I would love to see some of the people that actually have morals in our community to kind of represent our community, but it will never happen because they don't want to represent the community. They don't care. They don't care what the Australian Jewish News. Do you think anyone in our dust cares what the Australian Jewish News has to say? Some in Chabad might, but not that much. They don't care, because to them, they pay as much attention to them as probably they deserve. They're nobody. But it is a shame, because I think our community does need a broader and more consistent and a more representative, when they love to talk about diversity in thought is never a thing. But when you talk about what's it called, when they do quota fillings for women because they need, 50% of the population is women. Well, when you look at the population of the Jewish community and you look at it, how much of it is actually conservative and how much of it is left-wing, you're not seeing that representation from leadership. And I think leadership, more than any other industry, is important. You talk about they're doing this referendum for a voice, to give Aboriginals a voice, where they only make up, I don't know, 4% of the population, but per capita they actually in Parliament have far more than 4%. I don't know off the top of my head how many Indigenous parliamentarians there are, but there's a heap in there, far more than what. And in the Jewish community, we're just not seeing that representation for the amount of conservative members of the community. And these are active members. You're not talking about the members by name. And I put myself into that basket too. Like, I don't even live in Caulfield anymore. Not by choice. I moved down this way because I'm married this way. But I'm not an active member of the Jewish community as much as I love my heritage and my family and my friends and my community. I'm just not one of them. So and they're the same as me. They're not. They may live close to it, but what do they do that's Jewish?
Well, yeah, look, it's a big problem. That explains.
But you guys, credit. It's amazing to see how AJ. Oh, sorry, maybe you'll take over. AJA, from the early days to now, and the kind of impact you're having and the size of your organization, it's amazing to see that growth, against all odds, against the entire establishment who don't want you to exist.
Thanks, Avi. And yeah, your growth is something we watch very closely as well. It's amazing. So tell everyone where can they buy your book?
Rebelfromthestart.com, or you can go to Amazon. But yeah, rebelfromthestart.com. Also, we have a book launch event in Melbourne already locked in for the end of the month. There's also a couple in New Zealand. We're starting in New Zealand because, hey, Jacinta tried to ban me. So that's the only way. That's the only good response we can have. But yeah, get it down. I'd love any feedback anyone has. I think some people in the community might be a bit surprised about my story, that it's not exactly what the AJN has purported my life to be.
Well, yeah, let us know if you do any Sydney book launch, but I do encourage everyone to read your book. It's not a hard read. It's very interesting.
It was written by a yeshiva dropout, year 8 dropout.
There you go. Yeah. Didn't take me long to read, but it was very, reading every word, just very revealing. Really good read. So I encourage that. Also, everyone can follow you on social media. Avi Yemini, Rebel News. Encourage that as well.
You can find my socials. I've made it easy. You go to followavi.com and it gives you all my social media, because there's a lot of fake pages, especially on Facebook, where I'm not allowed to have my own page in my own name. There's a lot of fake pages that it's just a crazy world out there. So if you want my actual social media, you can go there.
All right. Well, encourage everyone to do it. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep doing what you're doing. And hope to.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.